My name's James Quintero. I represent the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I want to thank you for the opportunity to say a few words in favor of HB 524 today. The rule of law is a cornerstone of our constitutional republic, ensuring that we live in a fair and just society. The bill before the committee today seeks to uphold that principle by preventing municipalities from holding elections on questions that are in conflict with state law. And it would do so through the introduction of an important check and balance, which comes in the form of Attorney General review. I'd suggest that a safeguard of this type is increasingly necessary as there have been a spate of legally suspect citizen-initiated measures put up for a vote in more recent times. And I just want to elevate a few of those instances for the committee's awareness. In May 2021, the City of Austin proposed Proposition E, which sought to institute ranked choice voting. In May 2023, the City of San Antonio, of course, pitched Proposition A, which had a host of very controversial items, including a move to decriminalize abortion, as well as low-level marijuana offenses. And then, of course, in November 24, the City of Dallas put Proposition R before voters, seeking to also decriminalize 4 ounces of marijuana or less. Now, these are just a few likely illegal measures put before voters of late. I have to wonder about the effect of putting these things before voters, what it does to their confidence as well as public trust. And so I hope policymakers take notice of this issue and make the necessary changes to strengthen the rule of law and create an important check in this system. I'll leave you with this: local control is not a license for lawlessness. So with that, I thank you for your time and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you. Representative Lowe.
So I'm just gaming this out in my head. I'll be honest with you, I'm a little torn on this.
Mm-hmm.
What if the Democrats were in charge and they were passing all of these bills these laws that we don't like? Would we want to be able to put ballot measures in place? If they were to legalize abortion and my district wanted to not have abortion clinics. Mm-hmm. So basically what I'm trying to figure out is, would we be okay with this if the roles were reversed?
No, I appreciate the question, Representative. You know, for me, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way at all, for me personally, political concerns come secondary to matters of principle. And so when I look at the situation and I try to game out what may happen in the future, what I seek to try to do first and foremost is ensure that those higher principles are in place, and then the politics we can deal with later. So to the extent that we can put in place protections and safeguards that really make sure that the rule of law is held to and observed, I think that ought to be the committee's foremost concern.
Thank you. Vice Chair Joyner.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here today, James.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Always good to see a constituent, even if you don't claim me all the time.
Yes, ma'am.
My question's actually relatively similar to Representative Lowe's, and I was digging into some of the case law on this today. I'm in law school, which means I'm reading way more cases than I should for fun. But I was sort of digging into the case law and was interested to see that most of the older cases and the cases that reached the high courts in Texas were over tax transparency provisions and cities trying to challenge and saying those tax provisions conflicted with state law or conflicted with their city charter, which is effectively conflicting with state law. So I mean, again, I'm sort of that question of, are you concerned about potentially in the future not making any aspersions against current elected officials,
Sure.
but are you concerned about a dynamic where those decisions are, again, done in a more partisan way mm-hmm. and used to really silence people advocating for things that are important to them?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Again, I go back to making sure that we uphold our principles first. And then once we have our principles in place, hopefully we do a sufficient job creating those processes by which we can honor the principles. And the processes are upheld by various policies. So when you think about how this issue is applied in the real world context, I would encourage you to think about principles, process, policy. And so again, you know, I think this measure is geared at upholding the rule of law, which is first and foremost, in my mind, a necessary item, because if you don't have the rule of law, then what do you have? And so it's such a critical item in my mind that you know, I'm very much in favor of this bill because of that principle alone.
Yeah, and I guess I think the other piece I'm struggling with was process, and I was grateful to hear from Rep. Tepper earlier that he does think the Attorney General's determination could be litigated. But I think between the two of which is more expensive, a ballot proposition or a long lawsuit, or an election on a ballot proposition or a long lawsuit, I think the correct answer is lawsuit much of the time. And some of these ballot propositions, such as the one in Rep. Tepper's district, were voted down. And if you have the AG making this upfront determination, doesn't that become another lawsuit to determine that before the election's even had, and in this case, an unnecessary election?
Yes.
Or
and
an
I think-
unnecessary lawsuit, it would have been, because it was voted down in an election anyways?
I think that's a very valid concern. Litigation is costly and expensive. I would gently push back and suggest that the erosion of public trust and the loss of confidence in the system is perhaps of greater expense. And so, you know, when you weigh the system to try and determine, you know, what is the greater value? Is it, monetary, or is it trust in the system and confidence? For me personally, I come down on that latter element.
And I appreciate that, and something I think a lot about too, that question of why people participate. But I wonder if it works the other way, that just that opportunity to have something that feels more direct and impactful than a name that maybe they know who we are, maybe we don't, might be the most powerful thing for somebody participating in the ballot. But appreciate your perspective.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions? Chairman
No,
Spiller.
I'm going to leave it alone.